The live recording of this week's podcast. And guess what? I got some company this week. Thomas Christ, how you doing, my friend?
Good. How are you?
I am exceptionally well, thank you very much. This is the show before the show, by the way, so welcome aboard. And again, thanks to Tom for joining me. We will record the podcast proper in about 10 minutes' time. So if you're watching on the replay, there'll be a timestamp down in the description. You can jump straight to that. So this is just our opportunity to shoot the breeze and hang out for a little bit. You just came off of a giant U-Rock show, Tom. You've got voice today. It was like, was it nearly 6 hours? I reckon you nearly topped the 6 hour mark.
It was close to. I don't like to go over 6 hours because there's a thing with YouTube where if something goes wrong with the video, because I had this happen one time before, you can't edit the video within YouTube anymore if it goes out beyond 6 hours. And I had a show that was like 6 hours and like 5 minutes, and then it got a global block. And I couldn't remove the thing out of it that I needed to get rid of.
There you go. Yeah, okay.
But it all worked itself out over a weekend, but it would have been nice to just be able to cut the thing out.
Yeah, well, there's your first tip, folks. Don't do any more. See, that's something that probably only the metalhead hippie, only this guy really needs that bit of advice, which is don't do a show over 6 hours if you want to be able to edit it in post. G'day to the folks who are here. Like I say, this is just our little show before the show. And look, your face was on the thumbnail, so I wasn't going to do the big drum roll surprise. Guess what? It's Thomas Christ. But we will do that for the audio folks who may not know you. We'll do more of the introduction. So if you're like, who's this bloke? Who's this Thomas Christ guy? I've not seen him before. We'll introduce him properly, but I didn't want to do it twice, so we'll do that when we get to the actual podcast recording. Let's say g'day first of all to the folks who are here live. Alex Backus, yeah, by the way, congratulations, 500 subscribers. I noticed that you, funnily enough, you're at 501 on your show, and then I woke up this morning and checked, and you're at 500, so I'm like, gee, I hope you don't drop to 499.
I know. Well, it was actually at 502, I think, when I ended the show, and then overnight it went down. The YouTube always takes its little tax.
It does, yeah. Well, maybe we'll chat about that in the podcast. But yeah, it's interesting. Don't ever bank on your subscriber number. I remember when I got to 100,000 because it was on one of your live shows.
Yeah,
and we hit 100,000 during the show, and then I was walking around feeling all chuffed and proud. And then it went back to 99,999, and I'm like, oh no! And it went to 99,998, and I'm like, oh no! And so yeah, it was interesting to go, oh crap, okay, that's right. And if you don't know why that happens, it's a bunch of things. Like there's some like old dead accounts that might be subscribe. YouTube basically go in there and they're pedantic about it. They'll start cleaning out your subscribers and people that have subscribed and that have got bot accounts or that haven't engaged with your content for a long time. So there's a heap of reasons, but don't stress about it. At the end of the day, it's just a vanity number, isn't it?
Yeah.
G'day to Mark Bro. Hey to Andrew Jackson. Boom to the metalhead hippie. We've got Scott Borthwick, someone I know that you know well as well. The one and only Omni Collective Creativity will be here to tell us what notes we're singing and what pitch we're in and what scale we're in, because he's got an amazing set of ear holes.
I've
got to tell you. Go to Manny from the Lily Pillies. Boom to you too, my friend. Chris Lane Sr., the man with the golden locks, is dropping on by. Hetriani's here. G'day, Hetriani. Joe and Barry Glenn. We got Brad Example. There you go. I know. Podcast number 2. If you just missed it, Jade Starr just did an amazing interview with the mysterious Mr. Smith. And that was really cool. He's a super... It's funny when you hear someone that's an amazing, talented musician, and then you find out that they're a really nice person as well. It's just like, phew. Because I'm like, oh, you could have been a giant dick, but no, he's actually a really cool guy. Who else have we got here? Clearly Epic. The one and only Steve from the GarageBand Users Group. Hope you're well. Doug Kidder's here. G'day, Doug. Did I hear a Doug Kidder track on your show yesterday, Tom?
Yes, and he rocked. He rocked real hard.
I think I remember you saying that, and you're like, whoa, I didn't know that Doug Kidder rocked quite that hard. I don't know if that's a backhanded compliment or what, but it was a very cool song.
It was awesome.
Well done indeed. Feisty Feathers here. G'day to you. Dan Eckberg, Mr. 500. Yes, Thomas Christ, Mr. 500. We hope he doesn't go. I'm keeping an eye on it. Doesn't go to $4.99 while we're here. Hello, Gregory O'Sullivan. Thank you for being here as well. And I think we've caught up. Omni Collective's got Mr. Smith's song in his head from the end of Jade's show. Yeah, we were just listening to that. We're like, has Jade finished her show yet? And we were hearing that Mr. Smith song as the fade out at the end there, and it was sounding really, really awesome.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and listen to like the full thing.
I know. I was preparing for this, and I was wrangling children and doing other things this morning. So, you didn't get to hear the whole thing, but it was very, very cool. And I always like hearing about artists and what they do and how everyone's different. Like, I think that could be the theme of this community, is that everybody's different, Thomas.
Everybody's unique.
Exactly. Uniqueness. Uniquity is important. Is uniquity a word, or did I just make that up?
I don't know, but I like it though.
Uniquity. Uniqueness? Uniquity. I don't know.
Sounds like iniquity.
Yeah, or equity. something I don't have a lot of. So yeah, this is, by the way, strap in, folks, because this is what this show is like. It is very, very random, but we do want you to be involved. So once we get to the podcast recording section, you can ask your questions. So you can just put a big Q in front of your comments, and if you've got any questions, I always joke this, but I'll answer the easy ones, and then I'll throw the hard ones over to Thomas, and he can answer those ones. And if you want to subscribe to the audio version of the podcast, it's at studiolivetoday.com/podcast. And something that you should do, I would be surprised if there's anyone here that is not already subscribed, but if you're not, you know what you need to do. You need to jump on over youtube.com/Thomas Christ or at Thomas Christ. They've got these handles in there now. You don't need to use the handles, but you can if you want to. And you can join Thomas and check out all of the great music videos he does there. He does 2 weekly live shows that you can see right there in the header. Got You Rock happening every Wednesday, 6 p.m. Pacific, 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. And then, why is this at such a weird time, Tom? Why would you choose to do a show at 9:15 and 6:15? It's almost like some other guy was always running late.
Yeah, I got to give a little bit of a buffer.
Yes, someone that may or may not do the happy hour that usually ends up being the happy hour and 10 minutes. So Tom has learnt from that, and he doesn't schedule a show right on that time period. The thing is, if we all did that, we'd build it in. See, I'm just an asshole. I just go straight over the top of Jade. Like, Jade's just finishing her last song, and I'm like, right, I'm starting. We're in. That's okay. I'm performing to one person, but we're in. We're away. G'day, Zach Thong. Is it just me, Tom, or is Zach Thong like one of the most supportive and persistent members of this community? Always there.
He's in all the shows. He's in all the shows. I'm impressed. I don't know how he does it, but we want to hear some Zach Thong music, because I know he was talking about he's got a lot of guitars and stuff. I hope we get to hear some music from Zach soon.
I hope so, because it's one thing. I mean, look, and I know I've said we'll save it for the podcast, but you know, I get in trouble sometimes because I'm like, create, record, release. Everyone should release music, and then some people have come to me and said, actually, Johns, I don't want to release my music. I just like listening to other people's music, and I make music just for me. I'm like, okay, maybe that's okay. Maybe you're allowed to do that if that's what you choose to do. But from a selfish point of view, I want to hear everyone's music. I want you all to share. Before we start the show, Thomas and I would like you to be our helpers here, because we need to get our levels right, and StreamYard that we're using here isn't always the best for balancing levels. So I'm going to say a sentence, and then Thomas is going to say a sentence of his choosing, and I'd love you to listen to these and just let us know if either of us need to go up or down. So I'm going to say, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog, and I'm going to throw over to Thomas to say something himself.
It's so weird, because that's exactly what I was going to say. But I'll just say that is what I was going to say.
There you go. I think we both grew up in like the 90s and 2000s where you like learned to touch type, and everyone knows that that's the one sentence you can go to if you're typing, because it's got all of the letters. If you didn't know that, the quick brown fox jumps over the lazy dog has every letter. Whole alphabet, including those quirky Q's and Z's and everything else. Look, right, we've got a 1 from Hippie. We've got balanced from Doug Kidder, and Doug knows his stuff, so and as does Scott Borthwick. So I think unless we see anyone jump in here and say, yes, sound like crap, and you need to change things, we'll leave that. Have we said hello to everyone? Did you see anyone in the chat there that I've missed, Tom? There
Clayton?
you go. KVK. So is this KVK? Is this Clayton Von Kluge? KVK.
Yeah, that's
Coils?
KVK.
See, I didn't know that. I didn't even look at the name. I just saw the way he's written this, and I'm like, that's Clayton Von Kluge. TC and Pete Johns together. Now we know we're in for a show. Well, hopefully.
Russ 8889.
There's Rusty. Hello to you, my friend. And Feisty, I think I said hello to Feisty Feather. I get confused now. And it blew my mind, because am I right that Feisty Feather and... No, who is it?
And Falcon Blueser.
Folk and blueser, and then folk. Are they all related? They're like a family. All the Fs. It does my head in sometimes. Hello, Raymond McGurk too. I've got your question, Raymond. By the way, what we'll do is I'm tagging any questions that come in, and they're going to go into our little tagged section because we're going to do question time later in the actual podcast recording, so that your questions all make it to the audio version as well. So. All right, we are at the 10-minute mark. I've got to queue up our theme music here, which I'm very lazy man. So unlike Thomas Cross, by the way, was that new? I don't never catch the start of your show, but your 80s style theme music that you're doing now is awesome. Is that a new thing, or am I just way behind?
Well, I've been doing it. It's probably been about. It's been since the summer. So.
Okay.
I just redid the whole thing. But it's supposed to harken back to, the shows like Full House and Family Matters.
It definitely does. It's perfect. If you haven't seen it, it is a perfect representation of it's just cool. It's just awesome. I've just realised that I'm using my Mix Minus and I haven't actually got it set up to play audio. So what I'm going to have to do is pretend that I'm playing the theme music that I normally put in here, which is just my song "There's No Such Thing as College," and just put that in afterwards. So I'm actually going to have to do some post editing, because I could play it, but then it'll start echoing and it'll screw up our Mix Minuses, and I don't trust myself to be able to recover from that. So I'm not going to bother. But
fix it in post.
Fix it in post, exactly. Sometimes you can fix it in the mix if it's something that you're just adding like that. Have you seen Too Many Cooks, the Adult Swim video of the 80s theme song parody?
I saw that. It's been a while.
It's been a long time ago. It reminded me of that. Like when I saw your intro yesterday, I had to go back into the archives and check out Too Many Cooks. If you're not squeamish and you want something really wacky and you're feeling mentally stable, go and search Too Many Cooks. By the way, it's not anything bad. It's just a really really wacky.
It's oddball, absurdist.
Yes,
by the way,
exactly.
I have to comment, like, this is some really sad news that I'm seeing here. I saw some people posting in the chat, and I was like, this can't be real, but I'm seeing it come up on my phone now that David Crosby apparently died.
Oh, that is bad.
Man, that's
I missed that. Just scrolling up now. Yeah, who I saw someone said R.I.P. Oh, Zach. Yeah, R.I.P. David Crosby. There you go. So. Yeah, so Crosby, Stills and Nash? Are there any of those still surviving? I can't remember now. It sounds bad, but there's so many people, and unfortunately we have so many of these obituaries that I lose track of who's still with us. So someone will correct us in the chat and let me know, and they'll be like, dude, Stills and Nash are still with us.
But David Crosby, I follow him on Twitter, and he actually, like, because anybody that's watched my show and stuff knows that I love Jefferson Airplane, and he worked a lot with them writing some of their songs and stuff together. Oh, wow. So, man, that's
yeah, it's the way it is, isn't it? Now that all the artists that we grew up that were just they were our age when we were young, and now we're their age when we were young, and now they're getting old, and unfortunately, that's what happens. Crosby, Still, Nash, and Young. That's right. It was the four of them at one point.
Well, I think it was Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and then it was Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young. I think there were a couple permutations.
We have them all. Okay, we do have them all. I prematurely, sorry to Stills and Nash, and obviously Young still kicking around as well. Hello, Kinger's Music, lurking at work. I saw the Rangers jersey on the thumbnail and had to stop by. Yeah, let's go Rangers.
Go Pens.
We'll get into. I'm sure we'll randomly just slide into hockey talk. Someone's already asked about the weather, and I'll save that for the question. All right, well, let's get on with it. Otherwise, we are never going to get this recorded. So I'm just making a note here. We're at the 14-minute mark. I'm going to pop Thomas backstage, and then we're going to bring him on like a true professional. We're going to bring him on and give him a proper introduction here to the podcast. So thank you, Tom. We'll see you in about 1 minute's time, my friend.
All right.
And we'll kick this podcast off once I've had a drink. We've got to pretend that the theme music is going. So I'll pretend I'm going to rock out to the theme music, and then we'll jump straight in. Yes, it is the Studio Live Today podcast here on Studio Live Today. And this week's show, we'll be talking about Apple. Have they abandoned their creatives? We've got some new Macs M2s that have just been released. AI and music, what's the deal with it? And should you be using YouTube to premiere your music? All that and more here on the show. But I'm actually really lucky this week because I'm not flying solo. You don't have to listen to me rant for an hour. I have a guest ranter or rantee joining me here on the show today. Please welcome back to Studio Live today, Mr. Thomas Christ. How you doing today, Tom?
I'm doing well. How about you, Pete?
I'm doing exceptionally well. I'm having a great time. It's the end of the week here, and we're going to talk music. Now, for the 4% of the audience here that may not know who you are and what you do, why don't you tell folks a little bit about the Thomas Christ story so far?
All right, so Thomas Christ is my musical project of, goodness, where are we at now? 24 years, I think it is. Going on 24 years, because I started in 1999, and, but yeah, so just started in my basement, with some Casio keyboards and Radio Shack microphones and a mixer and a mini disc recorder, if you remember those from back in the day. And yeah, I just started producing albums. The first 3 albums I had to do everything live to tape because I didn't have any multi-track capabilities. And then on my 4th album, I finally got a digital 8-track recorder from the Boss BR8, which was like a revelation because I was able to actually record multiple tracks and multiple takes, which is good when you're a solo musician.
Oh yeah.
And so then I've produced I think I'm up to like 18 albums now.
That's one of the weirdest things that when people get to know you and they look at your back catalogue and then they start counting up those albums and they're like, 18 albums? I mean, obviously you're doing this 20 plus year, but we'll talk a little bit about that because obviously in terms of releasing music, it's something that you've done an awful lot of. And getting to the point where you are now, obviously digital and online and using a lot of different things. And now you are kicking it pretty hardcore on YouTube.
Yeah, well, I have to say I ran into this individual on YouTube named Pete Johns, and I saw I was actually doing a YouTube search for if anybody had, or just a Google search for if anybody had ever recorded an album on using GarageBand.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking like, oh, it's like some rapper or something probably did. Because I just started playing around with it. I had it on my phone and on my iPad and stuff. And I was like, this is pretty cool. This is pretty full featured. And of course, the first guy that comes up when you search creating an album in GarageBand is Pete Johns. So I watched. He had like a whole 18-part series or something on producing and from beginning to end producing an album in GarageBand, and I'm terrible because I can't remember the name of the album, but
that's fine. It's all good. PeteJohns.com.
Yeah,
I
go to
can't actually remember what that one. That might have been the original EP even, but the album was Selfish Aware, and the EP was called Recoil, right back in the day. So it would have been one of those. But
it was probably Selfish Aware, I'm thinking.
Yeah, it might have been because I reckon that was about the time 2018 that you first joined the community, and then from there. And I know, look, we'll get into the podcast. We've got a heap of topics to talk about here, but again, I wanted for folks that didn't know you, I wanted to know a bit of the backstory, but. Yeah, now you're out there with your own shows and producing videos and doing a couple of live shows. You want to tell folks about the live shows that may not be aware of those?
That's right. Well, in 2020, a lot of people, we had some extra time to explore creative avenues, and I actually I saw Jade Star because Jade Star kind of factors into this too. I started watching her channel, got introduced to her through Pete, and she did a show where she just performed, she had all this music that, it was heavy music. It was like metal and stuff. And she just played, the backing tracks, off the iPad and did the vocals live. And I was like, I could do this. I have all my backing tracks and stuff. I was like, I need to figure out how to get this to happen. So I just did a test stream. I got OBS because people were talking about OBS, and I was like, I can probably figure this out. So I got OBS working and did a test stream to Facebook to my wife, and I performed one song to my wife. And I was like, I think this is gonna work. And then I figured out how to do it where it would go to YouTube. And so I was like, cool. Well, there we go. I can do a show. So I started Thomas Christ Live.
Nice.
And that I've been doing off and on, more on than off. ever since August of 2020, late August 2020, and just celebrated back in September 100 episodes of that show. And then I was talking with Russ8889 on Clubhouse back in 2020, and I said I had this idea because there's some people, Pete was one of them, and Metalhead Hippie were doing these shows where they play people's music, and I was like, I think I could do one of these shows, and it might kind of help to get a few more people introduced to what I'm doing, and also be a good way to kind of listen to all these tracks that people are producing, because there's so many tracks that are coming out all the time, and it's hard to keep up with. And I thought, well, if I'm gonna have like an evening where I'm going to listen to everybody's music that's been released over the last week or so, I might as well do a show while I'm listening to it and react to it in real time. Yeah. So that's when I started You Rock. And I got the name You Rock from one of my favorite industrial bands, is a band called Angel Spit. And Carl is the kind of the brains behind Angel Spit. It was more of a band, but I think now it's more of just a one-man operation. And he does a lot of stuff where he helps creators. In his own way, he makes videos and stuff talking about the music business and production and stuff of industrial music, and he does like Zoom calls with his Patreons. And one of the things that he always says in his emails and anytime he communicates with you, he says, "You rock." And I was like, you know what? That would be a good name for a show, and I like that it's on YouTube, so it's You Rock.
You Rock, yeah.
So
I like it.
Just made sense. So that's when I started, and it was like September of 2021, I think. I started You Rock, and it moved dates around a little bit, but it's kind of settled on Wednesday evenings pretty early on. I think it's just been there ever since, and it's been really growing and really attracting a lot of great talent, and I'm super proud of that.
Excellent. Well, there you go. There's the less than 10-minute version of everything that Thomas has done for the last 24 years in music. But if you do want to check out everything that Thomas has going on, go over to YouTube. You can search Thomas Christ. It's exactly as it sounds, ThomasChrist, or go to youtube.com/Thomas Christ. You'll see all of his music videos there, links to everything that you need to go and check out. And you also hang out on all the different communities. So if you're part of the Studio Live communities, either over on Facebook, which is the Create, Record, Release Facebook group, or the Studio Live Today Discord, then you can catch Thomas over there as well. We're going to jump in here to the podcast and start talking about some topics, but what we do up front here each week is give you a little bit of last week on Studio Live Today, and because we've got a special guest, we'll do last week on Thomas Christ as well, because you've got some stuff going on, you've got some music you're working on. So in the last week, we had a normal set of shows. So we had our Your Music Live, which is our live indie music show. Also had the Garage Band Weekly, where we looked at EQ and we tried to uncover and unwrap all the myths around EQ, because it's actually not as hard as people think sometimes. And we did our Happy Hour show as well, which is a live 1-hour show. If you want to check out all of those, as well as all the tutorial videos and everything else that I do, just go to studiolivetoday.com. All the links are there. You can join the community, you can check out the YouTube page, and you can catch up on everything that's going on. Thomas, what's your last week been like in terms of your shows and your music production?
Well, I would say at this point in time, I'm pretty much just the last couple weeks I've just been doing You Rock, and the reason for that is that I've got some illness in the family and some family stuff that I'm kind of dealing with right now, and so I had to kind of pare things back a little bit, but I am hoping to get back this week to doing Thomas Christ Live on Saturday, so we'll be kind of back to the normal thing. As far as music production, like I was starting to kind of work on. I'd released a few singles. I'd released Truth Eyes back in I think it was November, and then I just released actually right on New Year's I released Give Me What I Want, which is a bit of a fun like 80s kind of thing. I also did a Christmas song in there, Christmas of Sorrows and Fears, which is you're probably not going to want to listen to right now because it's. But hey, Christmas is just around the corner, and we got about 11 and a half months.
It's the beauty of a podcast, mate. Someone could be listening to this in 11 months' time, and it could be perfect for them.
There you go.
So, you're all good. Nice
and,
one.
Yeah, other than that, I've just been I have been slowly putting out tracks from my archives, which are tracks that like aren't on albums, but I have these tracks and nobody's really heard them. I've performed them a little bit on my live show, but other than that, they're basically haven't been heard before. So it's like, it's new to everyone else, even though I maybe produced them like 7 or 8 years ago.
Absolutely. And that's a cool thing. I think that one of the things that we have here living in the future and being able to produce digitally is going back into the archives. I know Jade Starr just uncovered and dusted off an album from a band that had never seen the light of day and now is, and it's a great piece of music. And a lot of the stuff that you've produced, and again, it's a whole different audience, because I know from your early days you'd be performing live in venues and it had a following of people that knew you, but outside of that, the internet didn't really exist back in those days, so you couldn't have the sort of community engagement that we have these days. So I think that's a great thing, because again, this show is about helping folks out, and Studio Live today is about helping folks create and record and release music. So in terms of releasing music, it's so simple to do it, and you can use DistroKid, who are a channel sponsor, to actually release it to platforms, but you can put it onto SoundCloud, you can put it onto Bandcamp, you can put it on YouTube, you can put it on Facebook, there's so many options, slaps.com, there's all these options that you can put your music out there for free. And it's kind of unlimited, which is a bit ridiculous, like the amount that you can actually just put out there. And I think some people are scared to just go, I don't want to, what if people don't like it? Well, guess what? People are going to not like it, and some people are going to like it, but you won't know till you put it out there. And I don't know. I know I get in trouble for saying, quantity, just put it out there. And people are like, but quality over quantity, Johns. And I'm like, that's fine. But who's the gatekeeper of quality anyway? For some people, some of the quality music being released. Have you watched Australian Idol or American Idol these days? They call that quality music, and I call that trash. But someone likes it because millions of people tune in every week. So yeah, it's in the eye of the beholder, or the ear holes of the beholder when it comes to music.
It's all subjective.
It's all subjective. Exactly. Don't chase perfection. It's all subjective. Yeah. just slap it out there. So that's what's been happening last week with me and with you. Let's dive in here to our feature topic. Now, I asked Thomas to give me some ideas, and he came up with this one, and it turned out to be more relevant. He was a bit clairvoyant with this one because it's more relevant than ever, given that we've got some announcements from Apple this week about some new Apple Macs and some products that are coming out. But the one thing we haven't seen is a new Mac Pro, and Apple seem to have changed their strategy a little bit. And you asked the question, and the question is this: has Apple abandoned creatives? So I'm going to throw that out here. We're recording this podcast live on YouTube, so if you're watching this podcast live and you would like to chime in, we'll read out some of your comments as we go through this. But Thomas, let's start with you. Why did you recommend this topic, and what are your thoughts on this? And do you think Apple have indeed abandoned the creatives with their latest strategy?
Well, I kind of do. Maybe not 100%. I mean, obviously, they still have. I mean, you still, with every Mac, you get GarageBand. You have access to Logic, which is one of the most affordable DAWs that you can come by, because it's only, I think, like $200 US. But in terms of the focus that Apple has, for a long time, it was just taken for granted. For all the way back when I was in art school back in 2001, and it was taken for granted that, like, oh yeah, you're an artist, you're going to use a Mac.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, you're a musician, you're going to use a Mac. You make videos, you do film editing, you're going to use a Mac. And so it went like that, and then I can remember like the introduction of GarageBand and Steve Jobs up on stage playing guitar and trying to record a song there live and stuff, and at the keynote, and it was such a focus of what the company was doing, and they had a lot of art programs like Photoshop and stuff that were very closely tied with Apple, and it went on like that for quite a while. And it seemed like sometime in the late 2010s that the focus all of a sudden shifted, and they've gone more to lifestyle. So now it seems like if you watch like their keynote addresses when they release new products or they release a new operating system, like the focus is all on health and lifestyle stuff. The watch tying in with like giving you like medical information and helping you like locate if you're out hiking or something. There's a lot of that kind of, a lot of like exercise programs, a lot of fitness kind of stuff. And when you total up how much you actually hear about music creation or art creation or photo editing or anything like that, it's almost non-existent.
Yeah, it's interesting, and I sort of buried the lead there, but they've just had an announcement they put out, which was a weird one. It was a press release with a video. It wasn't a live video. It was a pre-recorded video where they launched the new Macs and the new M2 chip. And look, there is the M2 Pro and the M2 Ultra, and they did have one snapshot of Logic running at one point. They did have one snapshot of some 8K multi-channel video editing, but even with what you'd consider is the more pro-level Macs announcement, yeah, it wasn't as much as it was before. And if you look at things like the iPhone and the iPad and the Apple HomePod and all the other, and especially the Apple Watch and their fitness, and now they're into the services model. So they've got Apple TV, obviously Apple Music, which is things most folks would be familiar with. Yeah, it really is opened up. And I think personally, I agree with you, and I've seen the slide happen as their penetration with iPhone and iPad in particular has increased, and now that their penetration into the home PC space with Mac has started increasing quite dramatically, we're seeing more of a focus. And I've always said that we as the creatives were probably, of Apple, were probably 15 to 20% of the people that used an Apple. Like you said before, all of your design studios, all of your musicians, all of your artists were all Apple. And there wasn't a whole lot on the consumer side, whereas now it's flipped around big time, and it probably is only 5%, if that are actually creating as opposed to consuming with Apple devices. I look around my family and, they all use iPhones and iPads on the daily or the hourly basis, and they're not using them to create a whole lot, they're using them to consume. So it makes sense. And again, $1 trillion company knows what they're doing when it comes to where their focus is. They're going to focus on where they can make another $1 trillion, not on the 5% of the pie that may be what we're looking for. So I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know where we're going from here, but what's your view? Where are we going to be? Where's Apple in 5 years' time? Do they have a Mac Pro? Do they continue down the iPad Pro path and leave us with our ports, or are they going to take away all of our jacks and make us just all be consumers as opposed to creators?
Well, I think first of all, as far as the Mac Pro, I kind of think the Studio has taken the place of that. Perhaps I think that may be what they were trying to do with that, because it is very powerful. Maybe it's not quite as hardcore as the Mac Pros of the past, but certainly with the Ultra Max chip and everything, like that's going to blow any of the older chips out of the water anyway. And then I think as far as the the software end of things. The one thing that I learned about recently that I've been heartened by was, and I didn't see anything about this personally, but I watched a video with actually it was Colin the band guy, and
yes.
He did a video about a partnership that they formed and somebody that they've hired that comes from Universal Audio and has come on. He was like the vice president of something at Universal Audio and has now come on board with Apple. So I can't imagine that that's going to happen and that's not going to have a big impact. And that's kind of what he was thinking too. That's not going to have a big impact on Logic and GarageBand. So maybe there will be some updates, at least in the future, related to that. And as far as the focus goes, I'm not saying they're necessarily wrong to focus on lifestyle, because they have the cachet already with the creatives and stuff. They may be losing it a little bit because they're not focusing on it as much, but they can kind of rest on their laurels a little bit and just kind of coast with that reputation that they already have. And the money is probably in targeting more people that might want to see all the features that Apple has in lifestyle and fitness and health and stuff, and they want to switch over from from Android or something to buy a watch or a phone. As far as the ports and stuff, I think like with the iPad, you're definitely going to still have some type of a USB-C port. With the phones, it does seem like they may be starting to move towards portless because they want it to be waterproof. That's probably the reason that they would do it. I don't know what that means as far as like being able to hook up interfaces and things. There may be ways around that I'm not thinking of right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of where they're headed. Maybe it'll be like where the Pro models still have a jack, and then then there's like a more just the regular models that don't have it.
I think
Hard
that's
to say.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with that. I think we will find that, and there's also that Edge connector, which is sort of more a high bandwidth connector that the iPad has, so the thing it uses to connect up to Magic Keyboards and things. So, yeah, I think that there's options there, but you're right. I think the consumer level, there are people that would never care if they can't plug anything into their phone ever again. They're probably going to be happy because when they drop it in the toilet while they're sitting there Instagram scrolling, then they're going to be covered. But for those of us that want to be able to hook up our phones to things and our iPads and things to things, we do definitely need a little bit of something. And I think a lot of it is just the old thing of confirmation bias, that you're watching stuff and you're just thinking there's nothing here for me, without realizing that if you are 5% of the content should be for you. And if 90% of the content was for 10% of the people, Apple are probably doing the wrong thing. And we've seen companies try to do that before, where they've said, we are elite. Look at Pro Tools. Pro Tools have been damaged. The whole Avid company and have been damaged by the fact that they went to subscription models and they said, we are the industry standard. We are the pro. And they pushed out everyone that I know creating now. I know very few, apart from those working in like pro level studios or that have to work or collaborate, I don't know anyone using Pro Tools anymore. Everyone's on Cakewalk by BandLab, or they're on Persona Studio One, or they're on Logic. So there's so many choices that allow people to get in that are not cutting off. So I think on the flip side of it, what Apple have done well is that they have given you a gateway into their infrastructure. So you can buy yourself now a $599 Mac with GarageBand and iMovie installed, and you can start creating even if you're not a creative. So I think for all they're not looking after, there's no new Mac Pro that we can spend $20,000 and $5,000 for some wheels on. We're still able to get this entry level stuff that's bringing people up from the ground root. So I think it's okay. We've got some. Sorry, go on, and then we'll read some comments from some folks here.
I was just going to say, yeah, it's very true about Pro Tools. Pro Tools built their whole brand on a false kind of thing where you had to buy the hardware to use the software. And so that's kind of how they became the industry standard. Really, I wouldn't even think that they are right now. I see more people using Reaper, to be honest with you, in Pro Studios. Because it's very flexible and it's inexpensive. And the same thing with Photoshop, because Adobe has kind of gone the same route as Avid with subscriptions, and now there's things like Affinity Studio, and there's lots of different options out there. So you're kind of not locked into these things that you used to be.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'm here for and on the video side, I don't know anyone that's cutting in Premiere Pro anymore, and even Final Touch seems to be going down. It's DaVinci Resolve is the absolute up-and-comer, and whether you're amateur and you're using the free version or pros using the pro version, DaVinci Resolve seems to be crushing, and everyone's using it. So there's some changes afoot. Let's grab some comments from the folks who are here live. And if you do want to catch the podcast, if you're listening on the audio version, we do record it live every week, which is on a Thursday afternoon or evening, or a Friday morning, depending where you are in the world. But head to studiolivetoday.com for all the information. Dan Ekberg Music says they're waiting on the M2 Ultra or the M2 Ultra Massive. Yeah, the naming's pretty funny that we've now got the Pro and we've got the Max and the Ultra, and then what's the next one going to be? No, I can't use Googleplex because that's a
the
Google
M2
word.
Mega Supreme.
Yeah, it's just going to be like pizza toppings. It's like, can I get an M2 with the lot, please? Just the works. Just stick it all on there. right. Clayton Von Clue says a huge percentage of pros in music and filmmaking are using. Yeah, and look, it's still the case. If you see any major studio there, they've usually got some, unless they're using Avid, unless they've got an Avid rig there at the very pro level. Hetriani's always been a PC guy, and yeah, I don't want to say that we're poo-pooing on PC. I was a PC guy for 20 years. I think you were as well, Thomas. We've both had big histories using PC. And it's only been that Apple have created these Macs that are entry level that help us get into Mac that have kind of made us, well, for me particularly, switch back almost permanently now. So Princess LDG says my family's into PC and not Mac, and that's also the case. I think I don't think I'm ever going to get my dad and like my brother and sister onto a Mac because and I think was it Metalhead Hippie that said too old to learn something new, to learn a new. There you go. Hitriani says I'm far too impatient to start over with something new, which I think is a valid thing. If it's going to impact your creativity and you're going to be a year without any music, then I'm not an advocate of change for change's sake. If it's working and if it ain't broke, sometimes you don't need to fix it. Do you reckon?
Yeah, well, when I was growing up, we were a PC family, and the reason was always like, because I always wanted a Mac, and it was always like, we can't have a Mac. We could never afford that. Those are too expensive. Would have to like mortgage the house another time to be able to get a Mac, and so we stuck with the PC. But now, with the latest round of the Macs, the M1s, the M2s, they're a lot more affordable, and in some cases, I think, better value than what you would get with PC.
Yeah, absolutely. Gregory O'Sullivan says, I'd say Apple is still making hardware very well suited to video editing. Yeah, absolutely. They've definitely, especially again, as we said, with the new hardware. Johnny says, I liked Apple and most of the software, but the new Apple sealed case means no mods. But Logic's still easier than Pro Tools and makes more sense. Yeah, what's your view on that? Look, we'll use this to kind of segue into the next topic. I just wanted to chat really quickly about the fact that we do have new Macs. So if you're listening to us here in January of 2023, we got a big surprise this week when Apple announced the brand new Mac Mini M2 and the new MacBook Pro 14 and 16 inch with the M2, M2 Pro, and M2 Ultra chips in there. No, Max, sorry, not Ultra. Ultra's not there yet. Confusing naming conventions. What's your thoughts on the whole Apple not letting you open the case and everything being on the chip? Is that something that you care about, you think is going to be an impact for many folks?
I care about it. I care about it because I made the full mistake of buying the M1 Mini with 256 gigs of hard disk space. And
who would ever do that? Oh.
And I thought, that'll be fine because I'll use the cloud and I'll use the external drives. Well, then I find out it doesn't play too well with the external drives. It has issues with that. And the cloud is very finicky. That doesn't always work. And some things, like your applications and stuff, have to be on the Mac. So you end up in a situation where you're like, that song that I recorded a year ago, I don't think I'm ever going to do anything with that. I'll delete that. That video that I did, I'll probably never re-edit that. I'll delete that. You have to make these decisions that you don't want to make because you need to have a little bit of space, and especially to do install a new version or something, or even just to have it work right, you have to have a little bit of free space available. Or else it starts getting angry with you. So I've been running into that. So I wish I could get in there and put a terabyte hard drive in there.
Yeah, and I was laughing there, but I did exactly the same thing because it was my first Mac, and I wanted to just it was more of a try thing. I was being a guinea pig at the time, so I got the 8 gigabytes of RAM and there's 256 gig of hard drive space. And look, it's still fine, but if I could do it over, I would go the 16 gig of RAM and I would go at least a terabyte of space in there. And in fact, shout out to my friend Jason over at the SongSpark songwriting group. He's I'm sure he wouldn't mind me saying, but he's just ordered an M2 Mac, and I said, what specs did you get? Because I was a bit worried that he would go, John's got the base level, I'll just get the base. And he's like, 16 gig, 1 terabyte. I'm like, good man. I feel good because I know that he creates great music, and video in particular, but even music, it starts taking up. If you're recording 24-bit audio and you've got a 16 or a 32 or a 64 track song in Logic or in GarageBand, it's going to take up some space if you're recording it at decent level. So
now, I will say I have the 8 GB of RAM, and that it doesn't really seem to have been too big of a problem, even with like video editing. I'm sure there's some places where it runs into a little bit of when you really have a lot going on in a song or something, but it's been able to do it with the 8 gigs. So that RAM is not that much of an issue for me.
Yeah, which is weird because I've always said, look, you could add storage, but you can't add RAM, so maybe go more RAM than storage. But you're right, like the challenges, I have not hit a RAM gateway at any point with the 8 GB, but I have definitely hit the storage with the 256, so maybe I need to flip my views on that one. Mark Bro says that Apple's targeting lifestyle because in this day and age, that's where the money is. The creative people are already on board, so they'll do just enough to keep them. I think you and I could have said exactly that 15 minutes ago, and that would have covered this entire topic. So, as usual, Mark Bro is giving us the exact information we need. Metalhead Hippie, by the way, Metalhead Hippie, if you are looking for another independent place to share and to listen to great music, similar to the U-Rock show that we talked about of Thomas's before and my Your Music live show, the Metalhead Hippie does a few shows, just a quick 7 or 8 hour show that he does a few times a week. So you can go over and check that out. Just search Metalhead Hippie, exactly as it sounds, with a PPIE at the end of hippie, on your YouTube, and you'll find Metalhead Hippie's shows and join that community. Feisty Feather, this is exactly how I felt when I first started using Macs. She says, I felt lost when I would jump on a Mac at friends or at work. I was the same. I would go to the Apple store because I'd had iPhones and iPads, and every time I go to the Maple? Oh, that's the Simpsons thing. Apple store, I would go and check out the Macs, and I would get so lost on the old versions of OS, the Tigers and the Lions and the other ones. I would have no idea what I was doing. It had one mouse button, and you'd have to click the wrong corner to close a window, and then you'd close it, but it wouldn't really close, and I was just so frustrated. But I think the benefit now is that if you use iOS devices, you can pretty much use a Mac device, because the latest versions of Mac OS are basically like a desktop iOS these days.
Yeah, not much different at all. You can, if you're used to using, there's a little more complexity to it, I will admit. And for me, I didn't find the learning curve going to Mac that difficult at all. I just kind of took to it, and it just made sense to me.
Yeah, it's doable. It's not as bad as I thought, and that's coming from an old guy that doesn't like change that much. So,
but I still don't get into Terminal or anything like that. I see those, sometimes when you look up how to fix something, and it's like, I'll just go into Terminal and type all this stuff. Nah.
Yeah. Just open up the command line and just edit these registry entries, and I'm just like, oh hell no. So you can definitely go, different ways. So that was our feature topic, and we're halfway through the show, so we got other things to talk about here that I wanted to jump into. So you suggested this topic here, and again, because this show is all about helping folks create, record, and release, therefore share and I guess promote their music, I get a lot of questions about promoting music, and the latest and greatest thing that I know that I've done, I'm pretty sure you've done some of these, and I see a lot of people in the community do, is premiering their brand new songs as videos on YouTube. Thomas, tell us about what this is for folks who may not know what the heck we're talking about there, and do you recommend it? Do you think it's the way folks should be going with their music?
Yeah, so YouTube is introduced, it's been around for a while now, where you can take any video and you can upload it, and you can set it as you can just release it if you want, but then you can also set it as a premiere, and you have a countdown, you have a set time, and it's almost like a live show, except you have it at a certain time. So a lot of people have been taking advantage of that, and so I have a bit of a controversial opinion, as I want to do. I'm not the biggest fan of song premieres like that, on individual song premieres, and the reason, it just kind of sometimes feels like, and it depends so much on the artist and the circumstances and the nature of the track that's being debuted, but like, you're gonna have like a 2-minute countdown for like a 3-minute song, and everybody has to be there at a specific time. Now, I am a little bit biased because I have a show, and you have a show, and Hippie has a show. I love when people premiere songs on the shows, and I think you're going to get a bigger audience that way, and I think you're going to get, I think Hippie maybe was the one that came up with this technique, but you send the song in unlisted on YouTube, and then when it gets played on the show, and I know at least on my show, I think on Hippie Show too, and probably the other ones as well. Yeah, I don't know if you do this, Pete, or not, or you would be open to it, but you play the song, and I usually play them at the beginning of the show, or at the beginning of the part of the world where they're from, and then you make it public after that. And I think that's a good way to do it. I know it doesn't work for everyone, and I guess it depends on the circumstances. I think, like, if you really worked super hard on a video and you haven't released a song in quite a while, and you really got it, what you feel is an amazing song, maybe then it would make sense. But I think like premieres, I would save. I'm sorry about that. Premieres I would save for like for an EP or an album.
Yeah.
I don't know how you feel about that. That's just my personal take on it. Because I follow all these people, and I get premieres all the time.
I must admit, I come and go on this sort of stuff. I have premiered videos, but I've found that longer form video premieres are a lot more effective. So, for instance, a lot of the shows I do that are an hour long, if I can't do them live, I do them as a premiere, and you get the same kind of live show feel, because you get people that can get there at a certain time, they can interact with a live chat like we're doing right now, recording this podcast live on YouTube, and you get that community feel. But you're right, the last few premieres I've been able to get to, because first of all, it's the pressure of knowing when to be there and being there in the chat room, and then, like you say, it's 3 or 4 minutes, and then you're like, good song. You're trying to quickly get your comments in there before the end of the song. Yeah, it hasn't really worked for me. And I also think that look, if you are a big artist, like if Pearl Jam are releasing a new single, they can premiere it to the world at a certain time, because all the Pearl Jam fans are going to be there lining up, and they'll go out of their way to do that. The latest Pete Johns song, I just don't see a whole bunch of people clamoring to hear it, because guess what? If you don't hear it at the time, you can hear it 5 minutes or 10 minutes later, or a day later, or a week later, or a month later. It's not that same sense of urgency. So I don't know. I'm kind of with you on that one, that the more I think about and the more I look at premieres for songs, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And I would, if I was an artist, and I am, I guess, I would probably spend more time getting the song out there. And then I think these days with short form content, and this would be we're going to be controversial here, like two middle-aged dudes telling you to get onto these other things. But what I've seen work well is things on TikTok, YouTube Shorts, using those little clips you can get through DistroKid and posting those on Instagram, Reels and Instagram. I think getting someone to actually listen to a whole 3 or 4 minute song at a set time is almost impossible. With attention spans now, whether you agree with it or not, with attention spans these days, it's almost impossible. Live streams are a bit different, because they're kind of more of that passive listening experience. So if you're watching a U-Rock or a Hippie Show or my show, it's more of a passive experience. I don't expect people to be sitting there attentively in front of their screens for even 2 hours or 4 or 7 hours for you guys, because it's more of a come and go kind of hangout chill time. Whereas I think that with music, I think you just need to get it in front of people and get a snippet of it in front of people, so that it attracts their attention and they go, oh, that actually sounded really cool. And then they may go and check it out if you can draw them to the place where you want to send them to. And I know I'm biased, but that's why I think that something like DistroKid's so good, because if I meet someone on the street and I tell them I'm a musician, they're like, oh, really? Where can I listen to your music? And I'm like, got Spotify? And they're like, yeah, like, just type in Pete Johns, and there I am. And I think that's a better way than to say, I'm premiering a brand new music video at 4 p.m. Eastern time on Thursday, the 17th of February. And they're like, great, thanks, I'll totally be there. And yeah, so I don't know. That may sound negative, and I don't mean it to be, but I think a lot of people spend a lot of time and effort and energy. And then the disappointment factor when, I've had 5 people and 3 people and 7 people show up for these premieres of mine before, and it doesn't feel great. So sometimes you think, I went to all that effort of setting it up and no one showed up. It's like having that, having the party and standing there with all the decorations and no one's there to eat the food. I don't know.
I think perhaps another alternative to it could be, like, if you really don't like the idea of premiering it on like a show, another possibility would be you can actually set up in YouTube, you can set a video to go public at a certain time. So you can set it at like on Friday at 3 p.m. and you could make like a short. People are doing the shorts now these days, you can direct people to that or say that I'm going to be putting a song out. It's going to go live at 3 p.m. So go and check it out when you get a chance, and that could work too. Yeah, because that way people can kind of go and check it out when they have the time to do it. And
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting one. I don't know, and I'm sure people have different views on it. So if you do have different views, feel free to hit us up and to let us know if you're watching this one on the YouTube. Then you can leave a comment here, or you can find out the ways to interact with us. Go to studiolivetoday.com. I've got all the links there, or at youtube.com/Thomas Christ, and jump in his comments and tell him you're wrong, Christ. Premieres are the best thing since sliced bread and always will be. Joe and Barry Glenn have got a comment here. Yeah, agree. Over in a flash, no time to comment. Again, the community here say what we say in like 4 words. We're just like ranting for 10 minutes and they say it in 4 words. So there you go. So premieres, we both put a big line through premieres. Okay, got it. You mentioned this one, and you said, should you start a pod, which I'm assuming was a podcast as opposed to a pod coffee machine, which it could be. Should you use pod coffee machines? I think they're bad for the environment, but podcasts and podcasting, like obviously I did a podcast for nearly 2 years and then put it on hiatus, and then I don't know, there was something, I got bitten by the bug. I was listening to a bunch of podcasts and I said I kind of need to have an audio format thing again, and that's what you're listening to right now. So we're getting a bit meta here. So what was your thoughts on this one when you threw that topic my way, Tom?
Well, I thought, hey, I'm here on the podcast, and you're on episode 3. This is kind of more of a question for you, really.
Yeah.
But
bounce it straight back at me. I like it.
Yeah, but yeah. So I think a lot of people, and I remember, like watching my Mel, some of the other shows that you do, and people would often comment like, "Oh, I wish this was a podcast," or "I wish I could have this in podcast format," or "I wish you did a podcast," and other people may be getting those questions too, and so my curiosity is there something to be gained in doing the podcast over just doing like YouTube videos, and how's the podcast been performing? I know it's early in the run, but how's it been performing for you?
That's a great question, because I'm a terrible one at actually looking at my stats. I used to do it too much, and then I kind of went, I've got to stop looking at all these vanity metrics, because you drive yourself insane. It's like it's a lose-lose game. Well, it's kind of, because you look at it, and if things are going well and if the lines are going up, you give yourself a pat on the back, and then if you're looking bad and the line's going down, you feel all downtrodden and you feel bad about yourself. So I don't know, I didn't like feeling bad about myself anymore, so I'm like, I'm not going to have a look there. But it is interesting that it's a hard thing to, like anything, it's hard to promote something. And I guess from my point of view, I didn't want to do it because it was going to be too hard. So to do a podcast, and traditionally to record it, especially if you're using guests and you're recording 2 different audio streams, and then you have to pull it out and you have to edit it, especially if you're doing ones that require editing. We're recording live to tape. So everything you hear, the coughs and the sips and the sniffles, they're all going in there. Sorry, Tom. I'm not doing any noise removal unless something goes horrendously wrong. But I just wanted an easy way to do it, and I must admit that I've started using, and I was using it before, but it's actually easier than ever now, to use StreamYard to record what we're doing right now. So we're doing a live video and audio stream right now to YouTube, and then that just gets saved, and I can just trim the bit out there, convert it to audio, throw it up using anchor.fm. So I guess that's the secret here, is that when I first looked into podcasting, you needed RSS feeds, and you needed hosts and hosting, and you needed all of this technical stuff. Anchor.fm, which is now owned by Spotify, so if you're an absolute anti-Spotify person, you might not want to use it, but Anchor.fm actually just makes it super simple to actually throw it out there. And I'm showing my stats on the screen here now because I don't really mind. We're getting about 100 folks watching or listening to the show, 94, about 83 plays per episode, so it's not massive. But we're also at episode 3. We've had 2 episodes out publicly, and I've done 0 promotion on it apart from mentioning it a couple of times here on the channel. So I think it is just, for me, it's an opportunity to go, I've found a lot of people's communities, and I've found YouTube channels, and I've found entire websites based on the fact that someone recommended a podcast to me. They're like, hey, there's this podcast. It's 1 hour a week. You lob in there. They give you a bunch of information. They have a chat. They seem like good people. And I've started with that. And then that's led me down the trail. And then I've discovered a whole community behind it. So that was kind of the thought process around here, is that for me, I've probably saturated YouTube and Facebook and Discord and all the places, because we've got a fantastic community here. Don't get me wrong for a second that I don't appreciate the community here. But when I look back at my mission statement of this channel and of my brand of Studio Live today, it is to help as many people as possible create, record, and release their best music. And I couldn't help but think there are people still out there that maybe they're not big into Facebook, or maybe they don't watch a lot of YouTube, but maybe they just are unaware that there's a community of people, this underground movement of indie music, that are actually creating and recording and releasing music, and that they can do it too. So that was a long way to say. I bet one of the community could have said that in about a sentence, to say, you should start a podcast if you want to try and promote your video content to an audio only audience that maybe don't watch video much.
Makes sense to me.
No,
I did see there. Is there like a monetization option for that, or how does that work? Like,
there is, which if you watch the video version, you can see it says $0 is my current balance. So you can start looking at monetization. Look, I haven't, because again, 100 viewers. I think if I monetized, and what you can do is you can embed ads and you can enable advertising and do other funky things there. I just simply haven't done it yet, because for an audience of 100 people and trying to attract more people, it wasn't worth it for me. So I'm making it a non-monetized thing. But the other thing you can do, like folks do with YouTube videos and with other things, you can get brand sponsors. So you can choose to have sponsorships where you do live reads of ads, like I do for DistroKid that you would have heard doing on Your Music Live and other shows, or you can embed ads. So similar to what YouTube does with its monetization, you can actually get ads embedded in your podcast. And again, I don't love that. Because I don't think you get to control the narrative as well. Like on YouTube, it's kind of related. Like if you're watching this video, you might have seen an ad for Masterclass, or you might have seen an ad for some sort of audio hardware or software, hopefully that's semi-related. But you also might have had a HelloFresh ad. Who knows? They're everywhere. But it would be harder. You wouldn't want to have a podcast that has an ad for something that is exactly the opposite of what you want. It's like an ad for Avid, and it's like, here's why you should always buy and use Pro Tools, and I'm telling you that you can use GarageBand on your iPhone and get good results. So yeah, I don't know. What about yourself? Have you ever been tempted? Are you a podcast listener? And have you ever been tempted to do? You got a lot of cool things to say, Tom. Have you been tempted to make a podcast and put it out there?
I've gone through phases where I've listened to podcasts. Right now, I'm not currently, but I did for a while. It's kind of nice, like when I'm in the kitchen, and I'll usually I'll put YouTube videos on. They kind of serve as podcasts, but you put a podcast on, and I can go and I can make my food and stuff and listen to a podcast, and I know I'm not missing anything in the video side of things because there isn't anything. But yeah, it's good. It's also good, I think, like driving in the car. I think that's another place where podcasts. But yeah, I've definitely been tempted to start a podcast and at least put my toe in the water and see what happens with it. It might not even be a music related podcast, but
yeah, and that's what I considered early on. I'm like, I just like ranting about, and that's why this is a music podcast. But I very clearly, hopefully, say that look, the main theme is to help you create, record, and release music. But I also go off on random rants and tangents, and a lot of it's created by the community that are here watching live. And now that I've got some guests on the show, which is great to have you on here, Tom, we can go off on even more tangents and talk about different things that are somewhat related to music. I really wanted to create the show that I wanted to listen to, which is just random banter in the music sphere. But yeah, I mean, because I love retro tech stuff too, so I'd love to talk about that sort of thing. I would never do anything down the political or news rant, because you can't win with that. That's why this show's kept very light. We don't apart from saying Apple are $1 trillion money making business, which I think no one can dispute. We don't sort of get down into the weeds of that stuff, so we keep it a bit light here. But it's interesting. So I don't know. I think you should, if you want to try it, just try it. And I don't know if anyone can relate to this, but I think a lot of us wanted to be like radio DJs. If anyone that's into music or into broadcasting probably did the thing where you got your cassette deck, or I know what the kids would do these days, you got your voice recorder on your phone, and you basically pretend you're the DJ, or you pretend you're doing a talk radio show or something like that. Like I've got super embarrassing old tapes lying around that one day maybe I'll pull out when I have enough confidence to share, because would be very interesting to hear those these days of little 8-year-old Pete talking into his TAC tape recorder and pretending to be on the radio. So if you want to do that, that's the thing. We live in the future where you can just try. So you don't even have to release it. But why not? Why not just hit record and record 10 minutes of your thoughts and then play it back and see if you present things in an interesting way. And if you think people might want to listen to it, then sign up to anchor.fm for free, stick them out there, and see what happens. You never know. You might get a following of people that like what you say and like how you say it. So go for it.
There is another weird thing about podcasts that I don't completely understand, but people seem to play music on there, and not just like independent music like we do on YML or You Rock, but I mean they play like commercial music on these podcasts, and it doesn't seem like they get in trouble or anything.
Yeah, so and for those who are wondering, there's two ways to do that. There's the legitimate way and the I'm hoping that I won't ever get caught. Because, I mean, I listen to podcasts about The Simpsons and other things, and they're playing very much, and movie podcasts as well, that are playing big clips of audio from movies, and you're thinking, how is, like, Lucasfilm's not coming down on this like a ton of bricks, this Star Wars podcast playing like a 2-minute chunk of a Star Wars TV show? And it's kind of, it's a bit the Wild Wild West. It's a little bit like what YouTube was early on before Content ID, or what the Napster was back in the day, where it's kind of hiding in plain sight, but no one's really caring. And I think unless you're a Joe Rogan, dare I say, or anyone that's making billions of dollars through advertising, they're not making enough money for people to be coming after them at the moment, or the ones that are making money in different ways. So if you are a podcast with a Patreon that's making most of your money, and then you're playing unauthorized, like copyrighted music as part of that, where does that person go? They'd literally have to sue you and try and get your Patreon earnings. So I think at the moment the copyright holders aren't even trying. The cool thing is, though, if you want to do it legitimately and you want it to be like a DJ host, Anchor actually have the ability to play anything on Spotify. Because they've got a deal with Spotify, you can actually use that music, and I'm assuming that Anchor just absorb the cost of those small amount of royalties that go back, because they cover the platform, and they're owned by Spotify, and they figure that if you're playing Spotify music in your podcast, then it's going to be good for Spotify, and more people are going to go and listen to the actual music. So that's another way you can do it if you wanted to go more legitimately and actually play music in your podcast. Where are we at? We've got about 10 minutes to go, and we've got a couple of topics, so we're going to have to do, and we did have, we got some questions as well, so we'll go fast here. An hour just flies by when you're doing this sort of stuff, doesn't it?
It really does.
Amazing.
Time McFlies.
Time McFlies when you're having fun. Some guy. So a couple of quick ones here. We'll do these in sort of turbo. So you mentioned, and this is going to get back into the actual music creation. We do talk a bit about music creation here, but something I get asked about a lot, and you mentioned it here, and that is EQing sounds that are in the box. So your virtual instrument sounds, your samples, your plugins, things that you're actually putting in your track. Do you need to EQ them, and do you need to add additional effects, or do you trust that the sound has been set in a certain way that it's probably already had all of that processing applied to it? What are your thoughts on this, Thomas, and what do you do? Because you use some synth sounds and you use some samples and things within some of your music. What do you do? What's your thoughts?
Yeah, so I've heard people express the opinion that because the sounds that you get like in the Apple Loops or in a lot of like the Rompler type plugins and things like that, because they're already processed, that you really shouldn't have to do much EQing or processing on those sounds. And I think there's some merit to that, actually. Because they are kind of EQ'd to fit in the mix. They are kind of a lot of times there's a little bit of compression already applied to them, and Dan Ekberg actually has it exactly right. It was Russ that Russ 8889, I think, that was one of the folks who mentioned that to me. So my approach to it is I still do it, because I feel like you kind of have to get everything to fit together, even though things may be pre-processed and pre-EQ'd. You shouldn't have to do as much to it as you would with something you record, like with a microphone or something that goes into your audio interface like a guitar. But you need to make things all kind of, it's like a puzzle that you're putting together. And you kind of need to make things fit together and make space for everything. So I still think you got to do a little bit of EQing, but I try to keep it to a minimum, especially with those kind of like pre-processed sounds.
Yeah, it's an interesting point, and I'll just give my opinion really quickly on it, which is that, and I think Doug Kidder said bottom line is does it sit in the mix? And that's the thing. When people say, should I do this generic thing all the time to this one thing that I do? The answer is always it depends, and I know that frustrates the heck out of people when I say, it depends, because different situations you may need to or you may not need to. So if you're throwing a loop in there that's really crispy and it's got a lot of top end because it's like a hi-hat or something like that, and that the rest of your mix has a whole bunch of high-end stuff, you might want to EQ some of that out because it might be overloading it. But if it's the only thing up around that frequency, you probably want to leave it in there to give yourself that nice sort of dynamic range across all your frequencies. So it really does mean you have to listen. Once you put your things together, and I think I mentioned in a recent EQ tutorial that the biggest mistake I see people making is EQing in an independent solo track, which doesn't make any sense because your EQ of your song should be all about, is your frequency range balanced? And there's no way, you don't want to balance every track because you do want more bass in your bass and your kick drum. You do want more mids in your vocals and your guitars, and you do want more high end and air in some of those areas, keyboards, instruments and synths. So if you just sort of do everything independently and put them all together, you'll probably have a big muddy mess because you'll have tried to harness and get the right frequencies on everything. So, it definitely depends. I don't add any EQ unless I listen to it and go, it needs something. So I guess my answer is I don't do it, but sometimes I do. Which is a very disappointing answer for many people because they just want to know. They want to know, how many dB do I put what frequency to where? And you just can't answer that.
Yeah, it's kind of like, I kind of look at it like what you do with guitars. Because people are enamored with this guitar sound where you have the scooped mids, and it sounds really awesome. When you run through distortion and overdrive and everything, and you have that scooped mid sound with really turn up the high gain, the high frequencies and the bass frequencies, it sounds amazing. Yeah. But when you listen to it by itself, but in a mix, it gets really muddy. It just gets lost. You really need a lot more mids and a little bit of the highs, but not so much, and it can sound not that great by itself, but when you mix it with the bass, when you mix it with the other instruments in the track, it all kind of gels together and it makes sense, and it makes the guitars pop out. So I think it's kind of like that too.
Yeah, totally. Totally. We're going to have to just jump into question time and then finish off here because for whatever reason, the two of us can really talk, and we've talked a lot about a lot of these topics. So I think the same thing happened last time. Yeah, right. The same thing happened last time you were on the show. I think most of the topics today are left over from the last time you were here. So we will keep the other topics as leftovers for next time you're on the show because I'm sure it'll be happening in the future. But a couple of questions that came in here. This should be an easy one from Doug. How's the weather in Pennsylvania over there? Are you are you staying warm? Are you buried under snow? I know that's been pretty extreme for a lot of folks in North America. How's it going?
No, it's been amazing. It kind of concerning at the same time because we've had virtually no winter except for like a week after, like right around Christmas time. We got a little bit of snow, but other than that, it's been like very, very mild, like spring and fall like weather, and mostly just rain, which is I'm sure like in the global scheme of things very concerning, but I'll take it. I haven't had to shovel any snow.
Which I know is not the case for many people in other parts of the world. And for us, we've only just started our summer. So we're a month and a half into summer and we've only had about a week of hot weather. So there's definitely some weird things going on around the world there. Metalhead Hippie asked, is it all going blue? So this was related to the ports and the lack of ports. So short answer, Metalhead Hippie, is that, we've lost our headphone jacks. So all the audio is kind of leaning towards Bluetooth for consumption, and all the charging is leaning towards wireless charging, your Qi chargers and your Apple magnet one. What's that called? Your Apple little clip-on magnet thing. I never remember the name of that. It's called something
MagSafe.
MagSafe.
MagSafe. There.
I don't know why. I think it's MagSafe because when you trip over your laptop cord, your laptop doesn't go flying to the ground, which is always a good thing. Raymond McGurk's got a question about DistroKid. I'm not sure if I completely understand this one. Why does DistroKid not always pick up on your streams? For example, didn't pick up on one song with 7,000 streams on Spotify and 6,000 streams on YouTube. This is now 6 months old and still outstanding. I'm not quite sure what do you understand anything on that question, Thomas?
Not exactly. I mean,
Sure.
there's Spotify music and YouTube music that you can stream music from, so I'm sure that's related to it, but I'm not quite sure what they mean by not picking up on it.
Yeah, it might be in your stats that perhaps, and it depends where it's being streamed. So
Yeah, maybe it's not aggregating the stats correctly.
Potentially, it might just be a linkage issue. So there's a fixer thing there. So you might just want to check and make sure you don't have, say, multiple artist names in Spotify and Apple Music, because that can happen when you release songs. Sometimes it allocates it to another your artist name. So that's why we always say have a unique artist name if you possibly can, and make sure there's no other Pete Johns or Thomas Christ or Raymond McGurks out there, because if you release a song, sometimes it gets outed to someone else, and then the stats don't report back, and sometimes even the royalties don't report back correctly. So you want to be careful to make sure that that's all linked up. But and get in touch with DistroKid support, because I know, like a lot of companies, they're a little bit buried. But if you go to studiolivetoday.com/DistroKid, there is an FAQ there, and I even have where you can go to actually ask them questions. And we have a question here from Brad Example, which we'll finish off the show with. He says, in Pro Q3, there is a setting when EQing that says make dynamic. What does that actually do? I'm still struggling with compression and EQ. Have you used I don't particularly use Pro Q3. Do you use Pro Q3 at all, Tom?
Yeah, that one's a that one's a bit rich for my blood.
Right.
I wish I could have, but make dynamic, I guess, would probably do something where it adds a little compression or something to it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I can only think of so dynamics usually just means that. To make something dynamic, the dynamic range is usually to make it have more highs and lows, like a more balance, I guess, and of loud and soft or high and low. So that, and again, you can have compression and you can have like dynamic range compression, which means that it only compresses it. So maybe it's that. Maybe Pro Q3 has a compressor built in, and maybe the dynamics is just adding compression to certain selected frequencies, because that's what a lot of people will do. Because if you've got, say, a guitar and you compress it, you may want to only compress those nice, juicy sort of mid and high ends. You might not want to compress the low end, otherwise it'll get all boomy and compete with your bass. So it might be something like a multi-band compression type option, I would imagine. You know what, Brad? Press the button, see what it sounds like. And if it sounds good, leave it on. And if it doesn't, turn it off.
Use your ears.
I know that's always frustrating when people just say, "Oh, just trial and error." Like it's like, could you just answer the question? Just tell me what to do. I don't want trial and error. I want to do it. The other thing that Guzzo says, I believe it takes a few months. Yeah, that's a really valid point around Raymond's question from before. You won't get reporting straight away. So it's usually between 2 to 3 months for stats and for royalties to report out to DistroKid from places like Spotify and Apple Music. And that's probably the biggest question, the biggest frustration people have when they release music at first, is that they release their music, they've had 1,000 streams in the first month and 2,000 streams in the second month, and then they hit the third month and they still haven't been paid. And they're like, what's going on here? And yeah, it is about a 3-month delay or lag between that. And look, that's just because all these systems are probably pieced together with duct tape in some server room out the back. Like, I don't think it's not a well-oiled machine like you would think it would be. It's all kind of just piecemealed together. So it will take you a little while to see those numbers pop up there as well. That is going to have to do it, because we are already over time here, and I like to keep this podcast to around the 1 hour mark. So we have some other things we'll talk about next time, but let's just talk a little bit about what's coming up this week on our channels, on Studio Live Today and over at Thomas Christ. So here on Studio Live Today, we have the happy hour. I'm doing covers of covers this week. So I'm doing famous cover songs that were made more famous by the cover artist than the original artist. I thought that might be a fun one to do for the happy hour. We've got GarageBand Weekly and, of course, the Your Music live shows. This podcast will be coming out as well in video and audio format, and you can get the audio format at studiolivetoday.com/podcast. Thomas Christ, what is happening in the next week over on the Thomas Christ channel?
Well, I just had the great epic U-Rock show last night.
6 hours of it.
38 tracks. But I'm hoping to this Saturday, unless something really crazy comes up and things are a little unsettled for me. So hopefully I'll be able to do it. I'm hoping to come back with Thomas Christ Live right after Pete's Happy Hour at 9:15 p.m. this Saturday. So that's Eastern time. So I don't know what I'll do. I'll probably just do the thing where I pick songs out at random and just whatever strikes my fancy at the moment.
That's always
kind of keep it simple that way. And then
absolutely.
Coming up next Wednesday, we're gonna have a very special You Rock show, and it's gonna be and I'm gonna be doing this at the end of each month where I pay tribute to the folks who help out the channel, and those are our solid gold rockers, and those are just people who, donate to the channel and help to support it. And so I'm going to be playing a lot of their music and just trying to get a little bit of a spotlight, a little bit of focus on them because they're fantastic musicians. So that's what I got coming up on You Rock next Wednesday.
Very cool stuff.
And that's at 6 p.m. Eastern time.
There you go. Yes. And if you missed any of that, or you want to catch all the latest information or learn how to submit your songs or all of the rest of it, one place to go is youtube.com/Thomas Christ. That's youtube.com/ThomasChrist. Thank you so much, Tom, for being here today. It's been great chatting with you about all things music. We didn't mention the fact that you're a moderator on the Studio Live Today channel and have been for many years. And I know you are a fan favorite with the Studio Live Today community. So couldn't
thank
think
you.
of,
it's been an honor.
someone...
I appreciate the opportunity to come on here and chat with you.
Very cool indeed. As we say at the end of every show, I want to say three things. I want to say to be kind to yourself this week. Be kind to others as well, because that's also important. And keep creating music. That's it. We'll see you next time on the Studio Live Today podcast. Bye for now. And we're clear, but we're still here, folks. And Thomas, we are still live. So we're still here live on YouTube because we do a little post show here so that we can... swear, poo, bum, wee. No, that's as most as we swear here on.
It's funny because people who don't know, they're all like, "Oh, we'll see you, bye," and it's like, hang on.
Yeah, we're still here. We won't keep you for too long because I know it's people have got stuff to do. But I thought we'd just have a little 10-minute debrief after. This is the cool stuff. This is what me and Tom and Jade and folks do when we have it. I'm sure Hippie does it well. This is where we chat anyway. And sometimes the better content is the stuff where you do before and after that you guys don't usually get to see. So now you do get to see it. So I thought we'd just hang out for a bit. And I wanted to put... I didn't mention this on the podcast, but we had a comment here. Who told these people they should be on camera? And I'm like, oh man, burn. What a burn.
And I banned that guy.
Yeah, get rid of it. Oh, it's pretty funny there. But
it is funny.
I was gonna go on a rant about that and just say, no one, and that's the good thing because we live in the future. And who told you that you needed to come and watch and make negative comments? But no, it is always funny what people do and how they do it. But that was fun. That was good.
Yeah.
Good topics and good chat there. And hopefully we didn't go off on too many weird tangents. What do you reckon?
No, I think we stayed focused, we stayed on topic. I was wondering, like, I should have done we could do the podcast voice. We're talking about podcast.
Yeah. To is it NPR? Is it the one in America? Where they're just like, today on the Studio Live Today podcast, I'd like to welcome amazing creator. Gotta have lots of pauses. An amazing creator, an amazing live studio. It is Thomas Christ. Welcome aboard. I don't know why I suddenly go American because I think of the NPR, like This American Life voice. He's like, Thomas was a young man, and then he created 18 albums. No, maybe not. No, I've found lately that because I used to put the microphone here and I used to talk like this, and then I realized that because that was when we didn't talk about expensive microphones. That was one of the things you had there that we're going to talk expensive microphones, and then I realized that. You actually get a better sound, and I'm still playing with it, but turning your gain up, because this has decent microphone has such low noise floor, you can actually turn the trim up and have it a little further from you, and you do lose a little bit of bass, but it's I don't know. I think it sounds better because I used to get to a few more popping plosive P's, and I'm experimenting with placement. But then I do a live show and I use the same mic, and then I twiddle with all the knobs, and then I get it all out of whack, and then I come back to do this, and it's all different again. So
Well, I just realized too this whole stream that we've done is a great little talking about expensive versus inexpensive mics. It's actually a great little mic test because you have the what is it? Audio Technica?
It's the Audio Technica Artist Elite Series, the AE3300. And I only bought this because I bought it secondhand at a Cash Converters here for like $150. It's like a $400 microphone, but I bought it for like $150 from Cashies. So, and I love it because it's a handheld condenser mic.
But you're running, so that's a handheld condenser mic. Retails for about $400, running through Zoom Live Track L8. And then I have this, which is basically this is the Behringer version of what you have. This is the and I always forget the model number, but if you look up Behringer handheld condenser, you'll find it's usually a little less than $50, and it's running through the Zoom Live Track L8. So all the other variables pretty much are the same. So
Behringer handheld condenser. Let's find it. And you can compare that.
It's got a weird name.
It's not that one. Is it? No, that's a wireless. Oh man, yeah, Behringer.
It might not even be. It might only be on Amazon.
Yeah, Behringer are weird that they don't have consistency around their branding or their naming of anything apart from like the C1. Yeah, maybe we do need to try Amazon. Let's go over there.
I want to say hello to American Noir. Haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you.
There you go. Here's one of the problems with StreamYard. It's very literal with its interpretation of some of the what are they emoji that it doesn't understand. Very condenser microphone. Let's just see. I don't know. Now we have to try and find it so we can get it. Yeah, it's not. Oh, hang on. No, is it? No, it's not the 78. SB.
No, that's it. That's it right there.
That's it? Okay.
Yep.
Just doesn't have a price, so it must out of stock.
Oh.
You can't buy it. It's out of stock at the moment. But yeah, it's exactly the same like sort of form factor. Even has like the roll off there, so for you can do your low pass or is that high pass filter, low cut filter?
Yeah. High pass, low cut. We were talking about that in the chat.
Yeah.
In GarageBand weekly.
Oh man. High pass, and I just hate it. Why is it called that? Why do they have to call it high pass or like just naming conventions need to be one thing? I would call it low cut because that makes more sense. Like people don't think in terms of I'm passing everything higher than that frequency, and when the frequency is 20 hertz, it's like I'm passing everything higher than 20 hertz or 100 hertz, and it's like no, you're cutting everything below.
It should reference the frequencies that you're actually changing.
Yeah.
So.
Exactly. And then, it's the opposite for like a high shelf. Should that be a low trough? That's the opposite. A low step. I don't know. It's a bit silly. Yeah, high pass. I'm sick of it too. High pass filter.
Yeah.
Totally annoying.
And hello to Kid Kane Music as well, too.
Hang on. Who else did I miss? Okay, there you go. Hello to you. Yes. Howdy. If there's anyone we didn't say g'day to, it's not that we don't love you. It's just that it is hard. It is hard to talk and read and then process and do everything at the same time. It's fun, but it's a challenge. Like, how you do that for 6 hours on URock. Like by the end of it, I would just not be. It would all just be merging into one thing. I wouldn't be able to focus and concentrate. So I have the utmost respect for you and Jeff and folks that are doing shows longer than this. I'm at an hour and a half, and I'm going to start not making sense soon because it all goes downhill from here. Don't have a short attention span, but I have a medium attention span. But it goes pretty south pretty quickly once I run out. So
it does get different after you get to like 4 or 5 hours in.
Yeah. I just watched a guy use 80-20-20 Jade's pod mic SM $900. Yeah, I could barely tell any difference. And I think that's the like we didn't talk about expensive mics, but I think that's the difference. And I hate to say this because I know there's some people that are going to hate on me for saying this, but it really doesn't make any difference. Jade and Mr. Smith were talking about the SM58 and the SM57, like $100 dynamic microphone. And you compare that to like the $1,000 and the $2,000. And I know you've heard me say this a bunch of times, Tom, but it's like bottles of wine. Unless you're an absolute wine connoisseur that can taste those oak overtones or whatever the hell the wine people say, there's no point buying a $100 or a $200 bottle of wine. Buy yourself a $20 bottle of wine and enjoy the hell out of it. Don't buy the $5 plonk. So don't buy the Amazon $30 full kit that has the condenser microphone and the stand and the pop filter and the everything, because that's going to be trash. But you don't have to spend all the money. It's I don't know. Is that what your point was going to be with the microphone thing?
Yeah. Well, I had actually watched a video some time ago where they compared like an $80 dynamic microphone, and I don't even remember who did it. It was somebody I saw on YouTube. But they compared an $80 dynamic microphone with a $2,000 Neumann, which is like the best you can get. And the differences were not that great.
Yeah. And that's the thing. And it's the same with everything these days. Like, even with audio interfaces and the like, unless you're buying the absolute base level stuff, something with a decent preamp with a low noise floor and decent converters, whether it's M Audio, like people are like, oh, I will only ever use Focusrite, I'll never use anything else. I'm like, I've used M Audio, Presonus, Steinberg, Focusrite, iRig, probably a bunch of others I'm forgetting. Behringer, I mean, Behringer's the exception that proves the rule. But I've used all of those, and they're all about the same. Like, they have such small amounts of differences, because you're sending, again, I know I'm broken record on this stuff, but you're pumping in an analog signal from whatever microphone and cable you're using, so that's unchanged, and then it's processing it, and as long as it's got a decent preamp that doesn't sound all hissy and crap, and as long as the converters are converting that analog to 24-bit audio in a nice way without a lot of artifacting, then you're fine. And everything does that. Everything over about $70 does that. I don't know. That's my experience anyway.
Yeah, and I think what makes a bigger difference, honestly, is like your preamps and stuff. That's going to make a much bigger, and your interface, your analog to digital converter, I think is going to make as long as you've got a good, like, reputable name brand microphone, that stuff is going to make a bigger difference than your what mic you have. Yeah.
And again, no, I don't dislike Behringer. I've got a Behringer C1 that's great, works fine, no problem at all. I think probably with Behringer is that they copy the mid-range stuff, but they also make their own really crappy stuff. So as long as you're using the slightly better, the $50 Behringer stuff, not the $30. So the classic is the Behringer UM2, like the really, really crappy. Do I have it over there? No, I've hidden the box somewhere. I don't want it in my background. But the Behringer UM2 is a 16-bit interface that's got those really dodgy, crappy plastic knobs on top. The converters are terrible. The preamp is hissy. It's just a mess. So unfortunately, some people go and buy that because it's like $30 or $40 when they could get like the M Audio one, which is like $49 or $59 for the solo of that, and that's 24-bit and has nice preamps. Or you can get a Steinberg or a Focusrite for like $100, and you just get much better quality. The same with Behringer. The Behringer C1's a nice condenser mic. The SL75C, I've seen sort of blind test with that and the SM57, and a lot of people can't tell the difference again because it's about the same. It's just, again, you can, if you disagree with the whole Uli Behringer and his slightly wacky ways of doing business, then that's fine. But I don't get involved in that side of things. I'm anti-drama. So if you want to use it, but just don't use the bottom of the range stuff. Is my point on that.
If I could afford to do differently, I probably would, just because of the ethical things. But when you gotta do everything on a budget, it's like, you gotta kind of just like roll with it.
Yeah. And I don't know. I sort of swings and roundabouts with that sort of stuff, because I don't know. I don't think there should be the whole exclusivity of stuff. Like, if you're a company, you've got to be good enough to create the products and exist in the world where other people will copy. Like, you've got to prove to me why I should spend $100 on your product and not $50 on someone else's. And if you can't, because the quality is about the same, well, then it's fine. It's like people that poo-poo Starbucks. I mean, I don't like Starbucks, but people like it because they're like, oh man, I can't believe it that they're just doing this, and I want to go to my local coffee shop. And it's like, yeah, but Starbucks got big because enough people like them that they must make some decent coffee. And I don't know, that's a bad analogy, but people get very uppity about things being copied. Like, everything is going to be copied. If you put out a new product, you've got that little period of grace while you wait for the people in China to disassemble it and then reassemble it with slightly cheaper components and put it out there with slightly lower paid labor, and then they're gonna win the day. And for some things it doesn't matter, for other things it matters a lot. And I don't think a microphone, whether you're paying $100 or $50 on a microphone, it's not the biggest difference, in my opinion. In my opinion, in my experience.
I agree 100%.
All right, so we're an hour and a half in here, so I'm going to let the wonderful studio audience go here. But thank you so much, everyone, for hanging out with me and Tom here today.
Thanks, everyone.
It has been great, and I'm liking the format of this, where we get to have a bit of a casual chat before and afterwards. We then do the pod, and we crack that out in an hour. So that is all cool. I'm trying to schedule in Jade to be a guest on the podcast in the next week or two, and I've also got Sarah Newen, who is a creator from here in Australia, who's an excellent creator, like speaks really well, really smart lady, knows her stuff a lot better with the promotion and the artwork, and like she's a Canva expert, so she knows about all that. So if you got questions, we've got her on in 2 weeks' time. So start thinking about those questions about your artwork and your promotion strategies and building your
live
brand.
streaming.
Yeah, and live streaming. Oh, yeah, she's covered everything. Actually, before we go, you were saying you've got a new live streaming platform you're just testing out. Do you want to let folks know what that one is in case they want to take a squiz?
Yeah, so and some of you know there's a YouTube creator out there who helps with live streaming stuff named Michael Fryer Jr., I think his name is. And he put me on to he's done some videos lately about this new streaming platform called EVMux. EVMUX. And what it is, we use a thing called StreamYard, and StreamYard is kind of like it makes it really easy to do a live stream. It's based in the browser, but EVMux is kind of like that. There's also a thing called OBS, and OBS is the Open Broadcaster system where it you can really customize everything, but it's a lot more technical. This is kind of a happy medium between the two, because it gives you the convenience of the browser-based streaming, and it of course the processing is done on their side of things, so you don't have to, it doesn't burden your machine as much as like OBS, which does all the processing itself. But this lets you do custom overlays, and you can really customize everything exactly the way you want it and set up scenes. And I think it'll even interface with stuff like Stream Decks and things like that. So
Wow.
I think it's pretty exciting.
That it looks cool. It's definitely a similar sort of pricing structure by the looks of it to StreamYard and Restream and all the others.
The other nice thing about it is that right out of the gate, even in the free version, it gives you 1080p.
There you go. Yeah, so you got 3 gig of storage. Yeah. Oh, very cool. So what are the streaming limits? So 2 hours each live, a total of 30 hours monthly. Yeah. So fine for me. You and the hippie might be struggling there with the 2 hours at a time. Be like, welcome to U-Rock Part 2. Welcome to U-Rock Part 3. Just do it in chunks.
That's why I'd probably, if I was going to do it, I would probably do the $25 a month one.
Yeah, that looks good. If that's in, because that's the thing. The reason I'm on the professional package with StreamYard, it's the only way to get stereo audio, and it's the only way to get 1080p. So it'll be interesting to see. It doesn't say anything about stereo or 1080p in these ones. So I'm assuming that would be the case. So I'm intrigued because I use StreamYard just because I've been using it for a long time, and would be keen to try other things, because between you and me and the 37 people here and the couple of hundred that'll watch this on the replay, I've reached out to StreamYard because I've used them so much, and I talk them and I promote them so much, and they haven't been that keen to sponsor any of the shows here on the channel, whereas someone that's newer to the streaming platform, they may be. So there you go. Look out for the Studio Live Today podcast, brought to you by EVMux. Coming soon to a platform near you. It's 2023. The financial situation in the world is not exactly brilliant and stable. So any help we can get. So I'll have to look into that. So there you go. There's a tip for you, and there's a tip for me. I'll dive into it and see, because I can't see. The stereo thing's big for me, because I always want, for things like the happy hour, it has to be stereo. And I can't see it in the list here. But
now, as far as I know, I think StreamYard is stereo.
Yes. What we're doing right now here is stereo. So StreamYard gives you stereo. So if I wanted to show that, if I just grab my... Oh, no, I'm not going to do it here live. Yeah, I can do it here live. So if I grab my panning knob, this is me all the way over to the left, and this is me all the way over to the right. So, StreamYard definitely has stereo in the higher Well, it might even be in
I think mine's in
You think
stereo.
the free version does? It's in the settings. So under settings audio, there's a stereo audio button there. So
Yeah, because I have that too.
You have it then. That's cool. It used to only be. So we're going to assume then that EV Mux must be stereo as well. We'll do some research. I know this is for about 3 or 4 people. Doug Kidder, so on replay, this part at the beginning won't be viewable. No, Doug, so this will be here forever. I'm trying something new where the live stream, you can come back and watch this full live stream with all the bells and whistles in the beginning and the end. I'm then going to clip this and cut it and put it out as just a standalone video of just the podcast. So folks that want just the stuff can get that. And then the audio version won't have any of this random ranting in it. So there you go. Might actually go now. I've been threatening to go, but I wanted to find out about that because I'm going to spend some time today researching that because it looks good, and maybe we'll do some test streams here on Studio Live today as well. I'll steal Thomas's idea and go and run with it. Cool. Thanks everyone for being here. As we were saying before, thank you, Tom, for spending the time with us here today. And we're going to see you next time. Don't forget happy hours and hopefully Thomas Christ live on the weekend. You rock. Go subscribe to Tom. I don't think you're under 500.
And a couple things that you should know about.
Yes.
Right after, well, not right after this show, but in
yes,
20 minutes, Leela is going to be on with Ron Ward. So
that is a good point. You know what I'm going to do because we've got folks here now. I'm going to take you behind the scenes. I'm going to show you how we do this. So I'm actually I think Ron's allowed me to divert to him. So I'm just going to go into my studio here. So there, I'll give you the link here. So I'll throw this in the chat. So if you want to go there manually, you can go there. But I'll show you how we do this in the biz, how we go to our back end and can actually make sure that we divert you straight over there. Because I did forget about that. Leela mentioned it on her show, and then I completely forgot. So I'm just going to go into my live back-end system here and show you what we do. So this is my YouTube studio, and what we can do here is in the customization, at the moment, I've got this to send you out to the happy hour. If we edit this video, what I should be able to do is come over here, and there it is. So because Ron has allowed me to divert over to him, is it, which one is it? Is it that one?
No, that's Leela's channel.
Oh, that's Leela. Okay. So we might have to...
There it is. I see it.
Do you?
I saw it.
Is it that one? Mod Squad Edition? Yep. There you go. Yeah. Upcoming. All right. There it is. So we'll put that in the redirect, and once I save that in, you can actually do this live during a live show.
But you have to have 1,000 subs to do this.
Oh, do you?
Yeah.
That's a pain in the ass. I didn't know that.
Like, I can't redirect. I'm hoping that they open this up to everybody. You can be
redirected to, but you can't redirect to people. Okay.
Right.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, there you go. So go on over there and get yourself ready. Jump into the lobby. Tell them that Pete and Tom sent you over to Ron's channel and check out him live with Leela. All right, thanks, everybody, for being here. We will actually leave this time. I'm going to hit the button. I promise. I'm going to hit the red button. Bye, everyone. Have a good